start talking to you about the itinerary. This is the playbook, or I call it the wedding day manual. This embodies all the prep work that you've done for the whole day so that you know wedding day is going to go smoothly. I've also found that it helps making these decisions before wedding day. Every event during the day has a time attached to it. And I always plan a few extra minutes before and after, so no matter what, you're usually always in the safe zone. Think of times where you just may need a few extra minutes. After the bride gets dressed, she'll want some time to look at herself in the mirror. During the bride and groom's first look, they'll want some time to enjoy that moment and to not feel rushed. You also know that you might need a little extra time before family photos because you'll be putting everyone's boutonniere or corsage on them, and we know that the family likes to chit-chat, so planning a little bit more time there is always smart. I always have the family arrive about 15 minutes earlier before photos for that time. Another example is hair and makeup with the bridesmaids and, with them getting ready. All of these girls are going to be, getting dressed and getting their hair done, and there's a lot going on. And you really don't want to be behind schedule at this time of the day, because if you are, the whole rest of the day can be behind. So always set up a little bit extra time for those little things like taking pictures in their robes, drinking the mimosas, having that little extra time for those little things. So guys, let's dive right in. I want to talk about page 1 of the timeline. I have an example right here. This is one that I actually take to a wedding with me every time. So page 1 is the actual timeline of the full day, starting with Friday, or usually starting with the rehearsal, and then going clear up until the night of the wedding of when teardown starts. So planning out every single minute helps the day run so smoothly and allows you to not forget anything. So a big example for planning with this timeline is to think about drive time. If it takes 20 minutes to drive from the church to the reception, that has to be put on the timeline. A tip I do is I actually start from the time of the ceremony and go backwards. That way you can kind of figure out, okay, if the ceremony is at 1 o'clock, you know that the bride has to be hidden by 12:30, which means you have to do family photos before that, which would be noon. And then before that, you have, the bridal party pictures. So then that will start at 11:30, and so you kind of get my point where you just start at the ceremony and you just kind of go backwards from there. And then for the hair and makeup, you want to plan at least 4 to 5 hours during this time for the bridesmaids to get ready. You'll want to really communicate with the hair and the makeup stylist beforehand to kind of figure out how much time you need per person. This will determine how early you start. Like I mentioned, the time of when you start hair and makeup, that time is determined on all the other times throughout the day leading up before ceremony. And then we go into photos. And like I've mentioned already, I recommend doing the first look with the bride and groom before the ceremony. This helps the day run so smoothly and you have plenty of time for pictures. Now, if the wedding is early and there just isn't time for photos beforehand, then you may not want to do a first look. You can just do the photos afterwards. And then when we go into the ceremony, make sure your bride is hidden at least 30 minutes before start time. You don't want her out, and when the guests start coming, you want to make sure she's put away and that she can take a break, put her feet up, get some water. So allow that 30-minute block of her to be hidden and all pictures to be taken. At the same time, you want music to be playing, ushers and attendants to be ready to go while the guests start arriving. And then about 5 minutes before wedding time is when I start lining up the bridal party. It's your job to make sure you listen to the music and you know when the bridal party should start walking. In a later lesson, we'll chat more about the processional. But once you get the bride down the aisle, that's when you start grabbing everything in the lobby to take to the reception. For example, the extra programs, the guest book. And so at this time, after the ceremony, the photographer will really be in charge of getting the bridal party on the party bus so that way you can head back to the reception to make sure everything's ready. Candles are lit, the food's put out, the vendors have arrived. You want to make sure you are there. Obviously, if the ceremony and the reception are at the same location, you won't need to do that. And then we go into the reception. And as you can see in my example on the timeline, I usually don't put a time on things. We have time for dinner, but then after that, it's more being on a team with the DJ and just knowing the order of everything. You can't really put a time on how long it'll take people to eat or how long it'll take for people to get through the buffet line. Just make sure you and the DJ are on the same page and you know the order of events for the entire night. So guys, check out the PDF, and I hope you're following along with it because it'll make so much sense if you're actually looking at the page. You guys can see, I have bolded points here, where we start with Friday, we start with Saturday morning for a setup, and then where the girls get ready, the guys get ready. We have all the photos, a big block for the ceremony, and then the whole entire reception breakdown. So guys, this is your timeline. This is what I'm helping you to create. Every wedding is different. You will always have to change a few things here and there. But besides just those little tweaks, this is the order that I do at pretty much every wedding. Now, if you are working with a DJ or a photographer and they have their own way of doing something, be open to it. They're a professional too. They do this for a living as well. But just say, hey, here's what I have to say. Let's talk to the other vendors to see if they think this timeline looks good. And also, you may have a photographer that they think they need just a little more time for family photos, or they'd rather have a little more time for bridal party photos. But when I put a time on things, I usually just do what I've done before, and if the photographer wants to change it later, we totally can. So let's dive into page 2. This page really contains the list of the family and the bridal party. You'll want to make sure you can call everybody by name, and this is your cheat sheet. So this page will help you keep track of everyone involved with the wedding, the parents, the grandparents, the bridal party, the cake cutters, the program attendants. Even though you are there to help with the day, it's so important to also be able to delegate all these different roles. The bride will still want to assign someone to do these roles like cutting the cake and, passing out the programs. You cannot do it all, but then it's your job to make sure that person is cutting the cake and that person is passing out the programs and making sure they don't have questions. Also, going over this with the bride is so important because you don't want to get to the wedding and all of a sudden she has 2 candle lighters that you didn't even know about. Really ask those questions and make sure that you have everyone here on the list. Like if you have someone passing out the bubbles after the ceremony, you need to know those people. You need to know their names and you need to know their task and what they're doing. So that is page 2. That is your wedding party. Next, we will go to page 3, and these are your vendors. These are all of the people who are helping you put this day together. You have the name of the person, the business name, the contact information, the details on their arrival time, and if you need to get a hold of them, this is your contact page to go to. If someone's late, you have their cell phone and you're the one that gets to call them to say, hey, where are you? But guys, really getting to know your vendors, calling them by their first names, really respecting them and helping them make sure that they're having a great day too is huge. And it's also networking. These are vendors that you could work with at another wedding. You want to make sure it's a great experience, and building a team and finding a team of vendors that you really like, that's really important in your business. So take time to talk to them, get to know them, get their business cards at the wedding, and that way you can really make your future weddings even better, if you can work with them again. Next, we're going to talk about page 4. This is the ceremony lineup. This page shows exactly who is walking who down the aisle for the processional. This all happens right before the ceremony. Having this prepared and ready to go helps your rehearsal run so much faster without having a bazillion questions. So this also will show assigned seating as well. And you want to make sure you know as a coordinator beforehand if there are any family members that don't get along. I know it's hard to talk about, but it's a conversation that you need to have with the bride leading up before the wedding day. There may be divorced families, there may be family drama. When you're at these meetings with the bride, get that information. You need to know that. You need to know who needs to stay away from who, and it's so sad to talk about, but it is at a lot of weddings. So make sure you have that conversation with the bride, and that's why we do the assigned seating, so that way you know who's sitting where during the wedding. Then we have page 5. This is the page that includes all the decor and the setup for the bride. This is everything she's bringing to the venue. If you offered full service wedding planning, then you probably have all this information already because you probably helped her make those decisions. But if you're just the coordinator coming in just for the day, you want to make sure you're prepared and you know about all of these items. You must know about each piece of decor the bride will bring in. So when I was talking about the meeting 1 to 2 weeks before the wedding, this is it. This is when you go over to the house and you write down everything she's bringing, You sit down in the wedding room and you go over all the decor, all the pieces, and you organize it by table or location, okay? So I try and help the mother of the bride and the bride know how to organize all of this. So if you have everything that goes on the cake table, put all the stuff on the cake table in one box and put a label on it that says cake table, so that way you know that box is for the cake table and that's everything in there. Same with the head table, same with the guest book table, okay? So remember that people will be coming to ask you the questions, so you have to make sure you know everything about the setup. So that's why it's so important to go over to the house, write down all of that information, okay? And this is every detail, every detail. The forks, the plates, if there's a snack stand, you got to know that there's scoops and that there's bowls and cups. All of that stuff you need to write down, and that goes on this page of all of the decor, okay? Then we go to the layout. This page is where, it shows you the diagram of the venue. And usually the venue will help you create this, but you want to make sure that you have it as well, especially for setup. You'll want to know where everything goes. So layout is page 6. Then guys, the last page is the bridal party timeline. This is the page where I take the full timeline and I condense it and make it a smaller version for the family and the bridal party. So it's just the things that they need to know. I have the addresses of all the locations. I have what time they need to be ready, what time the wedding and the reception is, and I always put my cell phone number on there just in case. That way they know they can contact me instead of the bride. So I pass these out the night of the rehearsal and just do a quick rundown of the entire day. That way everyone knows where they need to go and where to be, especially the kids and the father of the bride. They may come at different times. So make sure you go over all those times at rehearsals. That way everyone's on the same page and everyone feels organized. So guys, that is your itinerary. I am so excited that you are going to be able to take a look at this because this is what you're designing. This is why brides are hiring you and contacting you to say, hey, help me keep my day organized. So I really recommend that you get very familiar with this itinerary and you make it your own, but use mine as an example. And every wedding you do, you're going to get better and you're going to learn and you're going to figure out, if we do that first instead of last, then the day may go smoother, right? So guys, take your time, build your own. That's some of the homework for this lesson. Build your own timeline. Get one started. I make mine in InDesign, which is an Adobe software, but you can make yours in Word or Pages. But just start a draft copy, and then that way every bride you get, you can just start with that copy and then just plug in her information, and it'll make your life so much easier, okay? So guys, check out the homework. I'm so excited for you to learn how to make this itinerary. Your bride is going to love it. You will be a pro in no time. So we will talk to you guys at the next lesson. Thank you.